Welcome to today's edition of the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com. I am Kevin Rogers along with Thom Cunningham, and we are now halfway to the Final Four. We're at the Sweet Six right now, I guess you can call it, as Baylor and Houston, they will face off coming up in the Final Four on Saturday. We'll tell you all about their games last night. Also look ahead to tonight's games. USC Gonzaga, the big one. Also, UCLA plays Michigan, so you got a lot of West Coast games or West Coast teams playing tonight for a chance to go to the Final Four. And we'll hit on some NBA in just a little bit. And if you want to join our community here at Vegas Insider, as far as on our YouTube channel, you could find us and subscribe to us, like the videos, and we will have this Daily Insider here every day at 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. So check that out, and we'll have some giveaways soon and other things to really get you involved here, not just you as just a watcher. You can also be a participant as well. So let's talk about last night. And two more teams advance, two more teams get eliminated. First, let's look at the first game, Oregon State and Houston. And Houston ends up building a big lead over Oregon State. The Beavers come back. They end up tying it, and then cutting it to 6. They don't foul at the end, which is really interesting. Everyone on Oregon State was waiting for that one, the foul with a few seconds left, but Oregon State just backed off. But what were your thoughts on Houston building that big lead? They were running away with the game, then Oregon State making one last rally.
I was a bit surprised Houston got off to such a strong start in the game. There were two things, though, that we've talked about numerous times, whether it be on a preview, whether it be on this live stream. It's that Houston has one of the most efficient teams in the country, and Houston offensive rebounding is off the charts. And you saw both on full display against Oregon State. I believe Houston had 19 offensive rebounds last night. I don't know if they had more than 19. They may have. I know at one point they had 19. That's absurd. And Wally Szczerbiak on CBS Sports, he actually said it best. Their missed shots are just passes at the rim with the offensive rebounding that goes on with Houston. So I wasn't surprised with the result. I thought Oregon State would cover. I thought Houston would win. I've had Houston in my Final Four. They're part of my best regional bets. So I wasn't too surprised with the outcome. I was just a little surprised at how quickly Houston got out to an early lead. And I think that Oregon State coming back, they were down 17, coming back and tying the game at 55-55 really just shows you how good this team has been all year. So hats off to Wayne Tinkle and all the Oregon State Beavers, Ethan Thompson, Jared Lucas, Kalu, who is probably hated on right now by a lot of Houston bettors with that last three-point shot he made. But, they had a great, remarkable season. As someone who's not an Oregon State fan, I'm just very proud of this team. So good job, Oregon State. Houston, though, I've liked them from the beginning. I don't know who else had Houston in their Final Four. I got 2 of 2 right now. Bama's not going to hit for me, unfortunately, but I'll take the Houston win since I had them in my Final Four.
And the stat, or it's not really a stat, it's more of a note or a nugget, that Houston becomes the first team ever to make the Final Four without beating a single-digit seed, which is amazing. They beat Cleveland State at 15, Rutgers at 10, who they barely escaped past, Syracuse at 11, Oregon State at 12. And I don't want to take away from Houston because they're still an excellent team, and there's always going to be criticism. There's always going to be something said. If Oregon State would have made it to the Final Four, well, they're on a lucky run, and they drew Loyola Chicago, and Tennessee wasn't very good or as good as we thought. But then Houston does it. Houston is in slightly below a major in the American, which I still think is a major conference. I think that's a ridiculous thing that they're not a major conference, but look what they did. It's not their fault that Rutgers was a 10. It's not their fault Syracuse was an 11. It's not their fault that Oregon State made it out of that top where Illinois was, where Oklahoma State was, where Tennessee was, and none of them could escape through that top part of the Midwest region. So I'm not going to take away from Houston. Now, Houston faces another Texas school. They get the Baylor Bears, who actually now are playing very good basketball after the slow start at the end of the season and they dominate Wisconsin. They come back and pull away from Villanova. They beat Arkansas by 9, barely cover, laying 7.5, and Baylor was in control of that game. Arkansas, who we had said yesterday, Eric Musselman, they have had a lot of, or Eric Musselman personally, his teams, Nevada, Arkansas, they've had a lot of comebacks in the tournament by double digits. They did it the first 2 rounds, couldn't do it again, and they just fall short against a Baylor team that, again, could be in the national championship.
Well, I'm expecting Baylor to be in the national championship. I love what Houston's done. I've been riding them for a while now, but Baylor has been one of the top 2 teams in the country for 2 years now, being them and Gonzaga both. I've been high on Baylor. Their defense has been really great. Teague and Butler stepped up finally last night for Baylor, making Teague made a ton of really clutch three-point shots. Butler struggled a little bit, but he was hitting his three-point shots a little bit better. And the first half of that game, you saw what happened with Davion Mitchell. He had 3 fouls. He had to come out. Baylor changed completely. It's insane how important Mitchell is to that team, considering the talent they have around Mitchell. It's kind of flabbergasting that Baylor can't sustain a run without Mitchell on the court. That's a bit concerning going against Houston, who, by the way, is I would consider Houston the Buffalo Bills of this tournament, where they're very, very good, but you can't get a read on them. They're very unorthodox in their style of play, which makes it difficult to game plan, all right, because they're all over the court. And it's almost like organized chaos in a way. So this next game with Baylor and Houston is going to be fun to watch, that's for sure. But in terms of the Arkansas-Baylor game, Baylor, their star players started playing better in Teague and Butler, so that was huge. The offensive rebounding wasn't as huge for Baylor in this game against Arkansas as it has been for Baylor in the tournament in the past few games. But going to Eric Musselman real quick and Arkansas, there's a lot of people angry with the fact that a player, the second highest scorer on Arkansas, fouled out of the game with 14 minutes to go. And I saw a lot of people angry at the refs. That's one thing. That's cool. Whatever. Then I saw a lot of people angry at Musselman for not taking his player out. We saw Baylor take their best player out in the first half after 3 fouls. He only played, 8 minutes of the first half, Davion Mitchell. Then you saw the opposite strategy in the second half, where Eric Musselman left one of his best players in with 14 minutes to go and 4 fouls. So, Kevin, I'm going to ask you this. Is it the refs or is it Musselman? Because I do feel like the coaching did play a factor in that game, where Coach Drew for Baylor, took his star out and saved him, and Musselman didn't. And you saw the results. So what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
First off, with refereeing, I mean, a lot of people have been critical of the officials during this tournament all over, because everything's a charge. There's no blocks anymore. And I think we talked about the Loyola Chicago game a few days ago, Loyola Chicago and Oregon State, where you're sliding over, and because you get knocked over, it's a charge. But regardless, just talking about this situation here, you have 4 fouls. Okay, you have 5 fouls and you foul out. You have 4 fouls. You just got to be more careful. I think that's what it comes down to. Now, if it's an offensive foul, straight up, you're going to the basket and you knock someone over, all right, I'm not going to get on you. But defensively, look, a moving screen you can control. Defensively, you can control, reaching in or putting your hands up or just backing off. I don't think there's anything wrong with a head coach saying to his guy, look, you have 4 fouls. We can't afford to lose you. I don't want to sit you now because we need you out there to say, all right, just play defense, but back off a little bit or don't make contact. I don't think that's asking too much. I really don't. And, does that go on Musselman? Does it go on the players? Does it go on whoever? It's
everyone.
It's just a tough situation because you don't want to sit your guy out. You got to keep him in. But also, if you got 4 fouls, you got one more and you're gone, you better be careful. That should be the first thing that you're concerned with.
Yeah. So, I thought that was a game changer there. JD Naughty getting fouled out with 14 minutes to go. And it was on a charge, of all things. He fouled out on a charge. So it was very interesting. But yeah, I'm really impressed with Arkansas this year. Kevin, I've been low on Arkansas. I've criticized their non-conference schedule this year. I criticized their conference schedule. They weren't beating anyone good. Then mid-season, they flipped the switch. They started beating a lot of good teams. They were improving as the season went on. I think that just comes with building chemistry and being a young team. They just needed games to get better. And then they made it to the Elite Eight. They beat Oral Roberts or also some lower seeded teams to get to this point. But it doesn't matter. They proved me wrong, and I consider this a huge success and an overachieving season for Musselman and Arkansas. I don't know how they see it in Arkansas with this Elite Eight run and then losing. I don't know if they see it as a disappointment or they're eager for next year. But for me, someone looking from the outside in on the Arkansas basketball program, they did a phenomenal job this year. So I wouldn't hang my hat on anything if I'm Arkansas. Good season overall.
Well, and also an Elite Eight appearance means you won 3 games, and which is a good look. Again, like with Houston, it's hard to take away that Arkansas beat a 14 and a 15 seed.
Right.
You look at it, they beat Colgate, they beat Oral Roberts. They didn't ask for Oral Roberts. They should have played Florida, okay, or even Ohio State. And they played Texas Tech, who was a 6 seed. Right. But, again, we tend to blame these teams for, well, you beat this team and you beat this team. Well, that's who you drew. You didn't schedule Oral Roberts. I mean, you did in December, but you didn't schedule Oral Roberts right here. So, for Arkansas, it's a really good job by them and for Eric Musselman to kind of put them back on the map because they had, they were a team in the 90s. They were around for a long time as, a top-tier team. Houston in the 80s was a premier team. And,
nostalgic.
So now you flip over to the other side, and Gonzaga and USC. And Gonzaga is still seeking their first national championship. And this has got to be their year, you would think. Haven't lost a game yet. They play USC, and that number's dropped to 8.5. It was 9 yesterday. USC, who you've been very high on this year, and what Andy Enfield has done, 10-0 against the spread in his career in the NCAA Tournament, 3-0 at Florida Gulf Coast, 7-0 at USC. Last 2 rounds beating Kansas by 34, beating Oregon by 14. So they've dominated some pretty good competition, and obviously now they're going to be tested when they play Gonzaga, the top team in the country.
For as much credit as USC's length and defense gets, as it should, I actually think their offense is going to have to produce to win this game. For obvious reasons, Gonzaga puts up over 90 points a game. There's a couple things working for USC here. Like you mentioned, Andy Enfield is an ATS covering machine in March Madness. He's 10-0. USC, as you mentioned, they've been demolishing their competition lately. USC's last 3 wins have all been by double-digit point total. You mentioned that's good teams too. Kansas, a team they faced multiple times in Oregon. So I think that's even more impressive when you can beat a team who's very familiar with you by double digits. So that's very impressive there. USC, they have scored 70 points or more in 6 of their last 7 games. So I do think USC is going to have to get to 77 to have a chance to win this game. They can cover. The spread is 8.5? Wow, that's down actually. It was 9.5 yesterday when we were looking at the spread. So that's a little bit more worrisome if I'm leaning with the Trojans to cover this game. 8.5 is a little bit more worrisome. Kevin, I don't know if you remember, but I said something along the lines of 7 to 8 points. So I was comfortable with the USC plus 9. Plus 8.5, I'm not too sure about. There's a lot of people leaning USC. I understand why. They have the size, they have the length, they have the talent. Andy Enfield, 10-0 ATS in the tournament. USC's won last 3 games by double-digit point totals. I do think this is going to be a lot closer, though, than possibly what the point spread is given. Interesting stat to keep in mind here, Gonzaga, they have won the second half in 17 of their last 18 games. So if there is a slow start from Gonzaga and USC maybe catches them off guard, there is a trend backing the Bulldogs in the second half. So it'll be an interesting game to see, but I'll tell you what, this 8.5 is starting to worry me a little bit more. I was much more cozy for obvious reasons with the plus 9.
So now looking down and see who Gonzaga would face, or USC. Let's not jump the gun that fast. Michigan, UCLA. I'm telling you, imagine if you had the Battle of LA in the next round, UCLA and USC. Like, that would be crazy. And UCLA has lost twice to USC, but first they have to get past Michigan. And the Wolverines, the job they've done, second half against LSU, the entire game against Florida State, and now they're back. And again, you can end up having 3 1s and a 2 in the Final Four when it's all said and done. For everyone that said, oh, well, this is going to be a crazy tournament, and you're going to have all these low seeds. And you had low seeds advance. Yeah. But I'll say it again. It is so difficult to win that first game. It's more difficult to win that second, then the third, and you're halfway there. Oregon State was halfway there, and they did tremendous and they still had 3 to go. They had to beat, think about this, they had to beat Houston, potentially Baylor, and then Gonzaga. I mean, come on, that's a lot to ask for. So, the job that Houston and Baylor have done already to win 4 games, they still have 2 more to go, so it means nothing, at this point if you can't win the final 2. So Michigan and UCLA, Michigan laying 6.5. UCLA, they came back from that slow start and beat Alabama. We know about that crazy overtime, or at least a crazy finish in regulation. All the missed free throws. Alabama hits the 3 at the end. UCLA doesn't foul, but then UCLA plays well in overtime to eliminate Alabama, a team that both of us thought would go pretty far.
Yeah.
So now UCLA, they've already won 4 games because they had played in the first 4 against Michigan State. Now what do they do against this Michigan team who obviously is hitting a stride right now?
Yeah, I was a little irritated about the Bama game because Bama prevented me from getting a clean sweep in the Final Four. Assuming Gonzaga wins today, would have had all 4, but whatever. Stupid Crimson Tide. They had a great season, though. Let's start with this game, though. All right, so Michigan. I want to go with them because I think that they should dominate this game. I know UCLA's had a great run in this tournament. They've played 2 overtime games. They have to be tired at this point. They're injured, which hasn't really done much to them lately. The injuries to Smith and Jalen Hill have pretty much unfazed them at this point. You have Jami Jaquez and John Juzang hitting any and every shot from three-point land that they take. And then you have Tiger Campbell running around. All that's great and dandy, but Michigan is a proven commodity. What Juwan Howard did coaching-wise to Florida State, Scotty Brooks or Barnes?
Scotty Barnes.
Yeah, I get him in the Florida Scotty mixed up all the time with the last names. But, what he did mid-game coaching adjustments to stop him from getting to the rim was probably the most impressive thing I've seen from Juwan Howard this season in terms of coaching on the fly. So that was tremendous. My conviction lies with Michigan heavily here for a number of reasons. Michigan, they have won the first half in 9 straight games on a neutral court. I expect them to jump out on UCLA, a very tired team right now. Also, keep in mind, UCLA had almost a week to prepare for Alabama. They have a day to prepare for Michigan. That's going to be a huge difference. Something Coach Kelvin Sampson talked about with Houston. He said the preparation for Syracuse was easy. We had a week. The preparation for Oregon State was not. The turnaround was quicker, so be mindful of that. Michigan, they've won 14 of their last 15 games when playing at night. Now, that trend missed for Alabama, but here we are again with another night trend for Michigan. Michigan, they've won 6 of 7 games when playing in the state of Indiana. Kevin, you know they play in Indiana quite often in the Big Ten tournament. They played in Lucas Oil during that tournament. They're playing in Lucas Oil now. They played in Mackey Arena. They played in Simon Scott up in Bloomington, Indiana. Eli Brooks is a monster three-point shooter inside Lucas Fieldhouse. Entering the Sweet 16, he was 6 of 12 from beyond the arc inside Lucas Oil. Quite impressive. And then you also have Michigan winning 8 of 9 games on a neutral court. So I am leaning heavily with Michigan here. Love UCLA. I'm the biggest Pac-12 fanboy you'll meet this year. Been high on them since January. But I do believe Michigan is the better team. They've proven everyone wrong in this tournament without their best player. And again, the Juwan Howard coaching adjustment he made mid-game against Florida State, I think it's going completely under the radar, as it should. It's not this big flashy moment, but it was a very, very crucial element to his coaching that I thought was completely overlooked, what he did to get his team ready to defend the rim from Barnes, Brooks, which one is it, Kevin?
Scotty Barnes.
Scotty Barnes, yeah.
Scotty Brooks was the old coach of, or is the coach of the Wizards, who you're thinking of.
Yeah, there's Brooks on the Gators, and then there's the Barnes on the Seminoles. I get them easily mixed up. That's what happens when I cover 347 schools, so bear with me. But yeah, I'm riding high in Michigan. Give me the Wolverines. It's still, for as good as they've been this year and in this tournament, does it not feel like they're still not getting the respect they deserve? Or is it just me?
Yes, because Michigan, towards the end of the season, people were talking about, and they lost 2 of 3, and then people kind of forgot about them.
Right.
And you're talking about Illinois because they snuck in as a 1, and they dominated Michigan at the end of the season. You talk about Ohio State and Iowa because they have Garza, and he's player of the year. But Michigan does kind of feel like they slipped through the cracks a little bit, and also because you have the likes of Gonzaga and Baylor that are right in the middle. So, for Michigan to do what they've done, and if they beat LSU, Florida State, and UCLA in the last 3 rounds, that's pretty impressive. I mean, those are 3 really good opponents, even though UCLA is the most misleading 11 seed you'll see out there. They're not an 11 seed. They're better than that, and they fell apart towards the end of the season. They've had injuries. You've discussed that. But I just don't see UCLA as they're much better than an 11 seed right now.
Oh, absolutely. Mick Cronin's teams are better than 11 seeds usually, and this isn't a year where Mick Cronin just came in and took over. He's been there now for a few years to establish what he wants with his team and his identity. It's funny with the Pac-12. The whole Pac-12 was underseeded in this tournament outside of Colorado. I thought a 5 seed was actually a bit high for what Colorado was. I thought they were more a 6 or 7 seed, but either way, the whole conference has been overlooked. UCLA is no different. It's just part of the, it's a different chapter in the same story. So, I want to take UCLA. I love them. I love Ju Zhang. I love everything about this team. I love all the players. I love rooting for them. It's just Michigan is a buzzsaw. I really don't think the nation has caught on to how dominant Michigan is. They've got big boys. And if I'm Gonzaga, the Gonzaga being the champion is not a lock, I don't think. I don't think it's as much of a lock as the perception was entering this tournament. I think people are starting to realize how good the Pac-12 was. I think a lot of people are realizing USC is not bad. When they had 4 losses and ranked 16th in the nation at the time, I thought that was a complete joke. They're starting to prove that theory correctly. And then Michigan. It's not an easy skip to the championship for Gonzaga here. You got to get by the length and size and talent of USC. Then you got to get potentially by the big bangers at Michigan. And you got Mike Smith running around like Sonic the Hedgehog. He's so fast. And then you've got Eli Brooks hitting shots from three-point land. Oh, yeah, and Franz Wagner and Hunter Dickinson are just bullying their way through the paint. So it's not as clear-cut Zaga is winning this championship as people might think. And I think a large part of that is because Michigan is that good.
Let's take a look at the NBA now, considering we've had a lot of college basketball talk, which is, again, it's hot right now, so we're going to do that. But NBA, let's look back at last night. It was a very busy night in the league, and let's look at the Monday card. And you had a lot of underdogs coming through, at least in the early games last night, covering Washington. That was a crazy game against Indiana. No Bradley Beal, and the Wizards hold off the Pacers. Indiana's been very hard to trust over the last few months. But Brooklyn, they edged Minnesota 112-107. The Timberwolves came back, cut it to 1 late. The Heat, you see this, they got outscored by 12 in the second. 18, they outscored the Knicks by in the third, so a bit of an up-and-down game for the Heat, but they finally kind of get back on track there. They beat the Knicks 3 times already this season. New Orleans, they beat Boston. That game stayed under the total, and Jaylen Brown didn't play for the Celtics last night. He was out. But then you had a couple of favorites here. Memphis pulled away from Houston, winning by 10. Dallas takes care of Oklahoma City. The Raptors, I think now are 1-8 or 1-9 with no rest this season, as they lose to Detroit for the 3rd time so far on the season. Sacramento, they had a big second quarter, won at San Antonio. The Jazz just punched the Cavs in the face. That was not even close. Steph Curry came back for Golden State. They win that game against Chicago. They're short skid. And the Clippers, without Paul George, they beat Milwaukee. And you see down 12 after 1, and then completely run over the Bucks over the last few quarters. And that was a game that a revenge spot for the Clippers after they lost to the Bucks the first time around. Any thoughts on what you saw in the NBA last night?
I have some thoughts on the NBA here, particularly with the Bulls game. So the Bulls, there were a lot of trends going into that game favoring them covering the Warriors, and then the news of Curry playing dropped, and that completely changed everything. But now the Bulls sent Lauri Markkanen down. They demoted him. This is going to be interesting because the Bulls have been a very good team covering the spread on the road as an underdog this year. You now bring in Nikola Vucevic. So now, not only do the trends now move around because you're bringing in a different player, the odds and the lines and the spreads are going to be moved now, particularly from what you're used to seeing from a Chicago Bulls team this season. Also, keep in mind, Zach LaVine is hurt now. He's not ruled out, but he's hobbled. So there's that, too. So I think the Bulls are a team you need to watch moving forward. They have been consistently good road underdogs, but the identity has now changed. And we don't know what Markkanen's chemistry was in that locker room, how other players will respond. Markkanen has already come out on the record and said he should be starting in the lineup, let alone being demoted. He should be starting. So the Bulls, just keep your eye on them. All might not seem well there currently based off the trade that they made. You think it would improve them, but it may have actually caused friction in the locker room. So just be mindful of that. The Raptors, you just mentioned the stat they had. They are on a tank job right now. They've been losing a lot of games. The futures market I want to get to real quick. James Harden was a recommended MVP favorite of ours to take. It was like plus 5,000 at the time. Well, he's now second on the odds list at plus 550. Yeah, there you go. So he's moved up tremendously. Keep your eye on James Harden. LeBron James has moved down, obvious reasons. He's hurt. Joel Embiid has moved down because he's hurt as well. James Harden is looking like a very, very good MVP pick right now for value. And then the most improved player market, Julius Randle is now favored. We recommended you took him at plus 1,000. He is now at minus 125, I want to say, something like that. Where is it? 143. So now his odds were minus 112 the other day. Now they're minus 143. So now he is moving up in terms of most improved player. So if you listen to Harden or Randle, more power to you because you got great value. But there's still value for Harden. Randall's value is kind of gone, but still cheap enough if you like him at minus 143. But I don't think it's going to get any cheaper. It's only going to get more and more expensive because you look at the names right there. I mean, maybe Zion Williamson, if he continues to play at a very high pace, might jump Julius Randle in terms of a long shot pick there. But honestly, I think Randle has pretty much locked up this award, especially if the Knicks make the playoffs.
This is the one thing I don't understand with this award. You have to explain this to me. That we have to disseminate what does it mean to be most improved player. That
Right.
Like Nikola Jokic, again, you could win an MVP and still be the most improved player. Like that can happen, all right? But chances are you're going to be a star. Nikola Jokic is a borderline star. So I don't know how he's on this list necessarily to be a most improved player when he, has been an all-star with Denver. They were in the Western Conference Finals last year. And I mean, Christian Wood, obviously, like that's a guy, okay, you never heard of. He was hurt. That's why his numbers dropped. Jeremy Grant went to Detroit this year. He's been the only bright spot with the Pistons. He's played very well. And Julius Randle, who bounced around with the Lakers and with the Pelicans, lottery pick out of Kentucky, very good players, had an excellent season. I can understand him being the most improved player because you kind of came from nowhere.
Right.
And now, you're an all-star. But that's where I just don't get. How is Zion Williamson on this list as a most improved? Look, he's had a great season. There's nothing taken away from him. But Zion and Jokic, I don't know how they're on this list. Like how you can make that argument.
Well, I guess maybe his stamina is improved. Maybe because he's playing more minutes than he did his rookie year. You would think, okay, that's an improvement. I mean, technically, if you look at the numbers, yes, Zion Williamson has improved. But like, what is going from 24 points a game to 27 points per game? You know what I mean? Like, is that such a big improvement that you put him on the list with Julius Randle, who has seemingly turned a franchise around? So yeah, I'm with you on that in that regard. Like even Zach LaVine has been a really good player in Chicago for a few years now. He's now on the list because Chicago is doing a little bit better. So it is interesting how these awards are dictated and determined. Personally, right now, as everyone knows, I'm still going with Julius Randle to win this award. But it's just interesting when you see some names here. Even Colin Sexton, Cleveland's terrible, but he has improved. So yeah, it makes you wonder what goes into the most improved player award because sometimes it could be a player who was very good, like Derrick Rose, and then he gets hurt. Then he comes back and has a good year. He wins most improved player. Or it could be somebody who hasn't been hurt and has been steadily productive, like Julius Randle, and then he just takes a bad team and turns it into a good one, along with other people like R.J. Barrett and Tom Thibodeau. But it's interesting to see how this award is determined and dictated. But I do think Julius Randle is for sure going to win this award. The odds are just now backing that claim.
And even another former Kentucky player, De'Aaron Fox, like he's the best player in the Kings.
Right.
Like, and he's in the. It's not. It's almost like a compliment to those guys to say like you're better than that. I don't want to. And again, it's not to rip Julius Randle or Jeremy Grant, but Nikola Jokic should not be on the most improved awards list. I just don't know why that's there. This is another one too that always irked me was the Coach of the Year.
Coach of the Year.
And look, Quinn Snyder should definitely be the odds-on favorite. Like, how is Steve Nash on the list? When you have James Harden, when you get gift-wrapped to James Harden, I know Durant's been hurt and Kyrie's been up and down as far as playing, and Kyrie played last night against Minnesota. Yeah. But how is Steve Nash on the list? Like, you mentioned James Borrego from Charlotte. They've done a good job. I don't think he wins the award. I think the top guys who have done the best job this year with what they have, Quinn's got to be number one because of what the Jazz have done as the top team in the West. Monty Williams has done a very good job. They got Chris Paul, but Chris Paul isn't, this is not 10 years ago. Chris Paul is towards the end of the line, and Phoenix has played very well. Nash, I think anybody could have coached that team. Doc has done a pretty good job in Philly. The Hornets are in first place right now, but another guy, too, who gets a lot of crap is Thibodeau, and Thibodeau's done a really good job with the Knicks.
Yeah, I honestly am shocked to see Thibodeau's odds this low. They're not low when you compare him to the rest of the coaches. Obviously, Thibodeau has higher odds than Dwayne Casey down there, Scott Brooks. But I'm telling you right now, Tom Thibodeau is better than plus 2,000 with the job he's done for New York, and if he gets them into the playoffs. The thing with Tibbs is he's competing against one of the best streaks in the NBA that Quinn Snyder was a part of in the first half of the season for Utah. And then, with Monty Williams, I think that's a fine pick, but that's a good team. DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul, and Devin Booker is not that's not an easy team to coach by any means to get them to the playoffs, but that's also not the Charlotte roster that James Borrego has, or even the New York roster that Tibbs has, for that matter. I personally have been impressed with Tibbs the most. I would take that value plus 2,000. That's just insane for how good of a job he's done in New York. But if you don't like any of those long shots, I do think Quinn Snyder wins it just because of what Utah did. If it's going to take Utah a losing run. Like, let's say Utah loses 7 of 10 to close the season, and Phoenix wins 7 of 10. Monty Williams might get the award. I think it's between those two. I don't think Nash gets it because of what you're saying, Kevin. I don't think Rivers gets it just because I don't think Philly, there's just no appeal there for me for that award. And then long shot, I'd go Tibbs. So, yeah, Snyder, Monty, or Tom would be my picks. And Tom Thibodeau, what a great first name he has, too. So.
But doesn't spell it the right way, though.
He doesn't. He spells it wrong.
But also, even with Doc, I mean, he's got him beat out, and they're winning without him. So I'll give Doc credit on that. But here's what's interesting, though. This just shows you, again, you're trying to go on name recognition. Nick Nurse at 100-1. The Raptors have been crap this year.
They've been bad. Brad
Stevens 100-1. The Celtics have been inconsistent. Yep. Steve Kerr, the Warriors, I mean, Curry's been out for a little bit. He came back last night, but they still have been around 500. The one guy that's so interesting, even though he's never going, even Steven Silas from Houston, lost 20 straight. How are you even on the list? But Mark Daigneault, the final guy from Oklahoma City, who replaced Billy Donovan, at 500-1, he's not going to win it. No. But the job that he's done, considering the Thunder have nobody left, they got Chris Paul was the last link. Everybody, obviously Durant, Westbrook, and Paul George, all those guys are gone. And they don't have anything. And yet, they've been very competitive this season, the Thunder. I know he's not going to win it because they want to give it to a team that's kind of gone over the hump like Utah or like Phoenix. But Oklahoma City, though, I think what this guy Mark Daigneault has done is way better than some of these other guys that are in the middle.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Oklahoma City just has such a poor record. That's why he's down there. But I think the testament to how well he's done is the development of Luguentz Dortz and some of the other players on that team. Dort is, I remember watching him at Arizona State. He was phenomenal. He is on a couple of lists right now. I don't think he's on MVP. I'm pretty sure he's on Defensive Player of the Year, and I'm pretty sure he is on Most Improved Player of the Year. So he is in a few markets. He's not going to win. But I do think that the fact that you have a coach like the Oklahoma City coach, I can't pronounce his last name. Yeah, okay. You're the hockey pronouncing last name guy. When you have a coach like him who is doing what seemingly seems to be a good job of developing talent, and you have Dort in a few markets for a player award, I think that the future of Oklahoma City is something that should be looked at with optimism right now. And then you look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they're just loaded, I think, from a youth standpoint. So it's encouraging. Despite he has the lowest odds of Coach of the Year, the franchise, I think it's encouraging that we've seen the eye test of Oklahoma City. They're competitive. We see Dort in a few markets for winning an award. He's not going to win, but that almost is an omen to what he can be in the future with this franchise. So I really like what I've seen from Oklahoma City this year, despite not being good. But in terms of the future and the developmental that is going with that franchise, I would say they're kind of ahead of the curve. I mean, Dort is really, really good, and Shai. I remember when they made that trade for Shai from the Clippers. I'm sitting there going, why would you give up Shai? Like, I understand Paul George is a great player, but to me, that was a bit too much. But yeah, should be a good future for Oklahoma City and the Thunder.
I mean, the biggest problem with the Thunder is they're in the same division as Utah and Denver and Portland, so it's going to be tough to climb the ladder there.
It's funny because they're not located in the Northwest either. But
no, well, a lot of these teams, it's all messy with what they have. Now, tomorrow, we're not going to do it today, but tomorrow we're going to look at some Major League Baseball, considering the season starts Thursday, in case you didn't know that. And we have all of our previews on our baseball page, and you can check out all the division previews. And center it there for you. So we have all 6 divisions. You could click on each of the links and read up on them. Also, MVP, Juan Soto of the Nationals, one of the favorites. Trevor Bauer's first season with the Dodgers. We'll see how he does. And, of course, win total odds as well that you could find. And baseball season's here.
Yeah, it's here.
Yeah, it's finally here Thursday. Thursday, April 1st. Is when it starts, and the lines will start to come out probably the next day or so for opening day, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. And want to remind you that you can buy picks for college basketball, and you can find them here for the Elite Eight, the 2 games tonight, Michigan, UCLA, as well as Gonzaga, USC, and $29.95 for the picks and expert guarantee picks, $39.95. Pay after it wins. If it wins, you pay. If it doesn't win, you don't pay. So you have college basketball. You also have NBA picks that you can purchase here. Only 4 games tonight, but still some action in the NBA. And as well, the NHL has another busy card tonight. Yeah. If you check out the NHL, a lot of our guys are on fire right now. So you could find the NHL picks on our NHL page. And, of course, we have a hockey breakdown tonight of the Bruins and the Devils from our friend Matt Blunt. 76ers Nuggets, the premier game in the NBA, and also the 2 college basketball breakdowns, and also some soccer as well. And the Oscars is coming up, so you better get your tuxedo ready for the Oscars. But also remember, you want to join our community, hit the subscribe button on Vegas Insider on our YouTube channel, and you'll be a part of it, and you'll get our videos every day. Tom has a breakdown of the 2 Elite Eight games tonight. You can find that on the homepage as well. And again, like we said, pretty soon we're going to be having giveaways and other things to get you really involved. So you're not just going to be a watcher, you're going to be involved with this on our YouTube channel. So we appreciate you tuning in, as always, 11 a.m., the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com. For Thom Cunningham, I am Kevin Rogers, and we will talk to you again tomorrow, the final day of March, and we'll know who's in the Final Four, or at least all 4 teams. We'll find that out tomorrow, and you've been watching the Daily Insider. As always, best of luck with your bets.